I want to call to order the special formal meeting of the Iowa City City Council for March 20, 2018. Roll call, please.
Botchway. Cole.
Here.
Mims.
Here.
Sully.
Yeah.
Taylor.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Throgmorton.
Here. Just as a note, Kingsley will be a bit late today. I'm not exactly sure when he will arrive. Item 2, motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with counsel in matters that are presently in litigation or where litigation is imminent, where its disclosure would be likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of the governmental body in that litigation.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Soleil, seconded by Thomas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, it's got to be roll call. Oh, man.
Cole?
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Mims? Yes. Sully?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throckmorton?
Yes. All right. Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn the special formal meeting?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Soleil. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so now we're going to turn to our work session for Tuesday, March 20, 2018. The first topic for tonight is to discuss the relationship with the Graduate and Professional Student Government Organization. I see that 3 members or leaders of the association are present. Thanks for coming. I'm glad we're able to get to this topic. I know it's been a few months, but there you go. Jeff, do you have ideas about how to proceed on this?
No, I think when we left it a few months back, it was left open for further consideration. There was some hesitation with a formal appointment like we have with the undergraduate student government, but certainly a desire expressed to determine what that best, what the mechanism looks like for establishing a good conduit of communication. So I think it's just a council discussion on one, if you want it formal, and if you prefer not to have it formal, what does that look like? Is there going to be a council rep that works directly with them? Is that something you want staff to do and report back to you on a periodic basis?
Yeah, I guess I should also say that when I first talked with Scott and Luke, both of whom are out in the audience, what was it, 5 months ago? I can't remember exactly. I indicated that I could think of at least a couple reasons why, well, a couple things to think about as we have this discussion. Then you folks probably have other things to think about. But one is basically to ask this question: why should we create liaison positions only for undergrad and grad U of I students? There are many other relevant organizations and groups in the city, so why just the undergrad group, but also just why this one as well? So we need to think about that at least. And the other is, if we choose not to formally create a new liaison position, can we think of an alternative that would have merit, like maybe assigning a council liaison to the GPSG, and so on. So I'm sure you folks have thought about this a bit. Do you have particular questions or topics you want to pursue other than what I just mentioned? Or do you want to ask questions of members from the GPSG?
Well, I'm wondering whether they could answer those questions. If they could give us their response in terms of having had an opportunity to think about it, at least would be my preference. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
It's okay with me.
Yeah, thanks.
My name is Sharma. Well, Tejasvi Sharma. I go by Sharma. And I'm the president of the Graduate and Professional Student Government. And here's Grant.
I'm the vice president.
Okay, so a little bit to your question as to why the Graduate and Professional Student Government should have its own liaison. If we see throughout time, the University of Iowa Student Government was first undergraduate and graduate. It was made up of both undergraduates and graduate students. In 2006, a lady who we admire went ahead and saw that some initiatives that were concerning to undergraduate students were not really concerning graduate and professional students. So in 2006, she went ahead and she fought pretty hard, and she went and, because of her effort, the Graduate and Professional Student Government was developed.
Was what?
Was formed. in 2006. So that's a little bit of the history behind it. We tend to see that there are a lot of initiatives that sometimes are more concerning to undergraduate students, and we are afraid that the voices of the graduate and professional students are probably not being heard. And that's not only with the city council, it's also in all aspects. And so what we'll be seeing from now on is that the voices of graduate and professional students will be heard more. I think we're by that point where our concerns are being heard, and we want to be involved. We want to get in and help in different ways as we can. And so we have started working on different initiatives with the city that we'll be more than happy to share with. But before then, is there something you'd like to add on that question?
Now, I see your concerns about if you let us in under the logic that, well, they have one, should we have one? And then that could extend out to multiple organizations. I see the dangerous slope that is. The fact of the matter is we represent a significant portion of the population that it appears that you're interested in having stay in your city. Now, we're very interested in integrating graduate professional students in the community. I've been here 8 years, and I've seen the way downtown has changed, and I like the direction. I want to continue working with you folks to make that a reality, I picture a more mature downtown, and I'm sure you all as well. And I consider us a way of, I guess, listening to what your initiatives are and presenting to the students, getting feedback, because we are a direct plug into young professional students around here.
I have to say very respectfully that it is not about graduate professional versus undergraduate. We are a team. We are a strong team. We work with them on campus initiatives, and we're doing well, I would say. This is more about bringing the graduate professional voices out here. We can see a lot of things that we can do with the city, and it will be very helpful. There's one thing I would really like to mention. When a graduate professional student is here on campus, does 4 years, 5 years, and the person goes away, the person only thinks about the University of Iowa. Why does the person not think about the University of Iowa and one of the best cities I've ever lived in? And so having that message and making sure that when the student is here for 4 years or 5 years, where they're spending so much time, they should also be somehow involved with the city, because it affects them. Their voices need to be heard. There are so many issues that all of you work on that benefit us or affects us, but we can be of help too. We're made up of 6 colleges. Why not have a law student come in and do a pro bono work for one of the businesses? Why not have MBA students volunteer with businesses? So there's so much collaboration that can be done, and we see that this is an opportunity where both the city can gain, and frankly speaking, the graduate and professional students will have something on their resume too.
Going off of that, I know the elephant in the room is there's been expressed that not a large proportion of graduate professional students live in city limits, but believe me, we want to. I'd love to move back. I was here last year, and what happened was rent went up to $800 a month, and I could go right over to Coralville, $400 a month. And I know housing affordability has been a huge issue. And as you guys work upon that and develop new apartment complexes or condos, or whatever you'd like to do, who you contract out to, we'd be a direct form of advertising to the exact population you'd like. And like Sharma said, we have access to a lot of healthcare professionals, and not just students. We have providers, and we've established a number of services with the Free Mental Health Clinic, UI Mobile Clinic, and I've been talking to Shelter House about maybe providing some dental students for dental work, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, honestly.
So am I right in thinking you've both talked with Gustav and Ben and Gustav, about what a liaison does? You've probably noticed that during work sessions, they are present, like Ben's sitting over here, and they attend all of our meetings, so that can go till, 11 o'clock, 11:30 sometimes, but usually not that late. And it's every 2 weeks. And the presumption is that, you're paying attention and are ready to speak about any particular topic, at least during work sessions, if it is of interest and importance to the people you represent. So I assume you know that, and it's not a trivial thing.
Yes, sir. And I know that being busy is a concern, but all of you folk are. And I feel like not diminutive towards your positions by any means, and I know that it's a large time consumption, but students are very used to, at least graduate professional students are very used to picking up very time-consuming projects like this with gusto and passion. I feel quite confident they would be able to do the role quite competently and excel.
I completely agree. If I may speak personally, our role is to make our organization better. We want, and we know, with this, we're very carefully speaking here, with this political era and everything going on, you tend to see that there's so much that's going on where student voices are making a difference, right? It is, I think we are all guided by the fact that we want to have an impact. And whoever that liaison is, right now it's Scott, and with time, we believe that the relationship between the city council and the graduate professional student government will always stay strong, and it has to stay strong, because the initiatives you're trying to accomplish, we want them to. We are trying to do the same thing, and I believe us having a strong relationship on that will be there forever. So if I may say, this is not really about, it is more about the impact. It is more about making sure that we combine our voices and do something worth moving the needle.
Mutually beneficial relationship, yeah.
So there are, what, somewhere around 10,000 graduate and professional students at the university?
About, yeah.
And about 20 undergrads, right, Ben?
24,000.
24? Yeah. You mentioned this earlier, or you touched on it earlier. Do you have any sense of how many graduate and professional students live in the city versus in U Heights or Coralville or wherever?
I do not have that data.
Yeah, not as of now, but we can figure it out if you want.
Yeah, okay. Any of you want to follow up with questions, or?
I think it's important, just because before we get too much into discussion, is that when this position was created, way back when, that was back when the University of Iowa Student Government and GPSG were the same organization. So I see an addition of a GPSG representative not as something novel, but more of updating something that was never rectified when the two organizations were split. So initially, the council had agreed for representation for graduates, all students, and then those barriers, or those organizations were split, and my responsibilities remained with the undergraduate students. So.
But here's the hard question: where would you sit?
I was wondering, I saw Ben over there.
Eleanor.
I might need to propose a new desk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about that other question, too? I mean, this obviously sounds like a really good idea, and there was a sort of very unique role when we had the university come on board in the first instance, but where do we draw the line? Maybe that's more of an us question to answer, but where do we draw the line in terms of if we allow you to do this, other organizations may too, and maybe that's a good thing, I don't know, but at some point we have to distinguish legitimate requests from terrific organizations such as yourself, and where do we draw the line on those sorts of requests to participate?
Here would be an example. The Chamber of Commerce. Why should the businesses affiliated with the Chamber not have a liaison that sits in on our work sessions, just as Ben currently does, and so on?
Well, they represent a body of extremely well-informed individuals that I believe are they're more informed on the topics that you're discussing, when I can truly say that most professional and graduate students have no idea what's going on at City Council. And that's what we want to change. What it came down to is that we saw how much Ben knew, and we merely wanted the same information sources. It's not practical to make Ben our only source of information. So having a person on the field be perfect, because we are targeting a population that is not very well informed. That's where I see the difference between at least the City Commerce and us. Chamber of Commerce, sorry.
I guess, Ben, you always go and report back what's happening here, right? I bet. I guess same thing will be just the student need to, the student maybe they don't have time to come here right now, but this way you guys can go and report back, and this kind of engaging the student with the city government, which is, I think, is a great idea. But speaking about the other organization, like a Chamber of Commerce, they hear all the time. And they have an organization, the Downtown District. They hear all the time. They knew everything through many ways. But for the student, I guess this is a good way for them to know about what's going on at the City Council. I'm I'm good with that.
I mean, I think it's really important with what people have said. I do think in terms of drawing that line. And just to kind of piggyback on what you said, Mazza, here, talking about, the downtown district or the chamber is always here and informed, but where is that next organization that comes forward and says, but we're not well informed, we don't have that information, and so where is that responsibility on the members of the community to get that information and get informed without saying we need a liaison for this particular group or we need a liaison for this particular group? I guess my preference would be to start with a council member liaison to the graduate and professional group, and if that proves productive and good exchange of ideas and back and forth, then maybe to form a liaison from them to the city council like we have with the undergrads, but to start actually with a council member, maybe going to their meetings and getting information and sharing information. And then if we did move forward and eventually create an actual liaison from graduate professional students to the council, I think it needs to be really clear from my perspective that the only reason we're doing this is, one, the focus on students, and also to basically rectify something that happened when the two organizations, undergrads and grads, split. I am not at all interested or willing to look at this as a next step towards more and more and more liaisons. I mean, I think people in the community, even students, have to take responsibility to get information and be informed if they want to be involved in and have input on the decisions that we're making. And we have that forum for that in terms of coming to the meetings, public comment, sending letters, et cetera. So I'm just really concerned that if we do this, that it's not, okay, next year it's one more, the following year you will just keep expanding liaisons.
I have a great appreciation for graduate students. My daughter's a graduate student, and I truly appreciate your interest in wanting to join us, but I too think sometimes we have to draw the line somewhere, and you're always welcome to attend the meetings. We always make it a point to note that it's a public forum, public are welcome, there's plenty of space, so you can always come to the meetings and listen or share your views during the public comment time. So that's always an option.
So one thing that makes the GPSG distinctive is that it's a very large number of individuals who have a clear boundary around their organization, right? They're graduate students or professional students at the University of Iowa, and there are roughly 10,000 of them. So I don't think there are many organizations in Iowa City that would fit that, would be like that.
And we are the top of the umbrella. We represent every department, college, et cetera, like hundreds of small groups, and the pinnacle is us. So that's where the outreach is exactly. And if each one of those individual groups want to liaison, I see the issue with that. It's just due to our ability to disseminate information and, again, just the pure amount of people.
Grant, does your organization meet regularly, like once a month?
Yep.
Do you do it through the year, or do you take a break during the summer?
Summer's when the new administration does the transition period. So generally the ones that work through the summer will be here. There's about 5 of us, but then everything gets started up again in the beginning of the scholastic year.
I think from what I thought, Ben, your comments were really useful for me to understand the history of this, and so I'm supportive of the idea of an additional liaison. I think it does correct the fact that you were once one entity, now you're 2 entities. You're both very large entities. I can't imagine there being any organization that would then say, well, me too, because you two are pretty much, you know, between the two of you, you cover the student body, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think our relationship with the undergraduates is really, I don't know, in my experience, is pretty strong and effective. And,
I would agree.
And so I think,
Especially recently.
having another 10,000 students, I would imagine slightly older, which I think, maybe you're a little bit more beyond, you're beyond your undergraduate years, so your perspective on your living situation may be a little bit different. I think that would be useful as well. I think it could be a very productive relationship for both of us.
There are intermediate possibilities, though, and I don't have a firm position on this, but one is the one that Susan suggested, which is that we appoint a liaison to the GPSG. But if we do that, I'm sure you know that we already have council members assigned to various boards and commissions and whatever in various other organizations around the city, so it wouldn't be anything really dramatically out of the ordinary. It's just a different way of having a relationship. But the other thing, I think, is that we could perhaps have try it as an experiment. Try having a liaison from the GPSG assigned to the council, say for a year, as an experiment. See how it goes from your point of view, from our point of view, and then revisit it a year from the appointment. What do you all think of that idea?
For me, I think since we have the undergraduate, and students already in, we should give the same things to them, because they used to be one, as John said, one things, and now they become, why should we make them an experiment for 1 year? And we have been here. How long have you been here? I wasn't here when.
Me personally, or
No, how long this happening, really, as a
Been here
student?
forever, you've been.
I think 2005.
Okay, since then, no one in the community said, come forward, and another organization and said, hey, we want to do the same thing. Why, when they come, that will open for the organization that you said in the community will come forward. If that's going to happen, it should have happened 5 years, since 2005, or what you said. Yeah. And now we've been how many years now? Over 10 years, I guess, 12 years. No, another organization come forward and said, you guys have student loan, we need to have another one. That, I think we just haven't permanent. We don't, not like 1 year or anything.
I guess we're that org 12 years later coming forward, but
Yeah.
I believe it was 12 years was appropriate for us to develop as an organization. There was a lot of administration and structural overhaul, and we are at a very good point in our organization to do this way.
Yeah, I'm talking about another organization. They said, this could be a problem for another organization will come over and say, hey, we need the same thing. Now, 12 years, no one show up and say they need the same thing. That's why I think this should move forward without any a specific period of time.
Well, it's an interesting point, but it is worth noting that right now, Ben sort of represents 34,000 students.
I only represent 24,000 undergraduates.
24.
By choice, I can advocate on behalf of the graduate students, but it is not written into my bylaws that I have to do that.
Okay.
Well, sort of where I come down on this is that, one of the things when I ran on was this question of I felt like the university and the city of Iowa City needed to have more cooperative relationships, because sometimes I think we are sort of two ships passing in the night a little bit, in part because you guys are doing wonderful things, you're working on your projects, and, the city has a lot of our own initiatives too. And here we have an opportunity literally coming up to our front door and allowing those greater partnerships. I think of what Susan had said, though, too, as sort of a preliminary step. I look at what is going to allow us to most effectively serve the student community, and I would at least like to explore the opportunity to have a council liaison so we could get to know your organization. There's certainly nothing preventing you from coming and visiting. That's sort of my personal preference. I do think in terms of the time commitment, Ben is incredible that you're able to do that as a student. Graduate students, there is a huge time crunch. You're looking at basically 10 hours of meeting. Is that going to be the best way that we can effectively collaborate? That said, I'm not dogmatic either way here. I think this is not one of these things where I think there's a clear right and wrong answer, but my sense is in terms of the best way for us to most effectively serve you is to have one of us. I would like to see it at a council level as opposed to just saying, hey, you can come to a meeting, so we can sort of see in the hood and what's going on with your organization and the students so we can more effectively serve you. So that'd be my preference, and that's sort of the way I'd have to want to vote tonight, with the expectation that you would be able to collaborate with staff, and if that that role with us wasn't sufficient, one of us 7 wasn't effectively serving you, I would certainly keep an open mind to come back and do this. But I think Susan comes up with a good point on that.
What do the rest of you think?
I prefer that it run in parallel with the undergraduate organization. I mean, it seems to me they're two sides of the same coin, so to speak, and that if the undergraduates are represented as the liaison, I'm inclined to support the idea of having a similar assignment for the graduates and professionals.
I do too.
I would just comment on what Rockne said. I think there's an opportunity to actually have more benefit faster by having a council liaison to the graduate professional students for a year, where one of us goes to their monthly meetings, maybe have a 10-minute spot on your agenda just to talk about some of the stuff the city's doing and how that impacts you, and to listen to some of the issues that you have that you think may be able to be addressed by the city. I think there's an opportunity there to move some things forward faster by starting it that way the first year.
I hate to say both, but yeah, both of them sound like fantastic ideas, almost in conjunction as well. And our meetings are actually Tuesdays at 7 p.m. as well. It's just conveniently enough. We could give an exception for that member, obviously.
Well, maybe we could sort of flip the order or something. Right? So I'd like to suggest this, and I know we have slightly different views about this, but I'd like to suggest that we go the council liaison route, so that we appoint one of our council members as liaison to the GPSG for a year, and then have that council member report back to us with a recommendation about whether to convert that into a GPSG member being a liaison to the council. There's a lot of mutual learning involved that way. What do you think of that idea?
I like that.
I'd agree with that, Jim.
Well, except for the conflict in the meeting, if that was worked out.
What Tuesday do you
I
normally meet?
assume you could.
First Tuesday.
First Tuesday.
We meet first and third.
Yeah, so, yeah,
That's not written in stone. That's really just comes down to what's always been. So I see no reason we couldn't change that.
John, you were nodding. It's okay with you?
No, I prefer, creating another liaison position.
Yeah, okay, so, but I count 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4. 4 in favor of doing what I just suggested, and 2 preferring a different route.
Real quick, for UISG, our meeting times are written in our bylaws, so it'd take a formal procedure, and I'm inclined to think it may be similar for GPSG, so I would want to look into that on your guys' end before that decision's made.
The bylaw change would be not very difficult.
If I may, very respectfully, I think having, and this is just thinking about this, having a city liaison come in on every Tuesday, our meetings, I guess it would be interesting, because I'm just trying to picture how our meetings go, and our meetings is pretty much university-related affairs and college-related affairs. I'm wondering, and very respectfully, if we will get as much benefit as we hope we'll get. For sure, the City Council will know how GPSG works. For sure, they will know what our problems are. I'm not very sure those problems align directly with City Council. The information back and forth will always be there. But the information coming in from City Council to GPSG will be much greater value than the information going from GPSG to City Council, I think. And so if the case of having a liaison this way weighs a little bit more when I think about it that way.
And what do you want the appointed council to do over there? What you are thinking of?
Well, I would guess to learn from the members of GPSG, the leadership especially, about what's of importance to them, what they're talking about, what they care about, and then to feed that information back to us.
but they would like to come here and take the information from here to their student and tell them what's going on in here and all the thing that we are working on.
But they can always come, just like any member of the public can always come and listen to our meetings.
If you give official things to undergraduate who are not for graduate, that's the thing. Why you favoring some group than the other?
I don't see it as favoring. I think 4 of us have said that we see this as a good way to start. And I do think with some discussion from the council member and the leadership of the GPSG about the agenda and the kind of sharing we want, I think we can move things forward a lot faster that way in the first year. And then assuming everything works well, then, and no reason, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't then agree to have them come on as a liaison after that first year.
That's sort of my thought too. And I think if we do it for a couple months and it's just clearly evident to all that we're not able to serve you effectively in that capacity, I mean, we adjust stuff all the time. So if that ends up being ineffective ways for us to serve you, then I don't know that we can't reconsider. And we're not talking about changing our charter. I mean, it's just for other, to reconsider
We can make a different decision next month.
Yeah,
if
and
we
while
really
welcoming you to
want
come in each meeting would be my thought.
Yeah, so I think we've got 4 votes for proceeding in the way I described, and yet we're going to try to learn from the experience.
Absolutely, and I look forward to meeting the appointee as well. And I think it'd be a great way for that person to interpret a lot of the city council proceedings to us, and we'd be really interested. We want you guys to reach out to us for any comments on anything. We want to be a resource, truly.
Excellent.
Thank you for your time.
So fellow council members, we'll have to think a bit about who wants to volunteer to be the liaison to the GPSG, and then we'll make that appointment.
Well, wherever it is, we welcome you with open hands. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, and we got to be clear about the timing of the meeting so that we don't end up trapped in a situation, right? Okay, thanks for coming, and thanks for giving us a chance to kind of process this. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to move to our next topic, which is to review the pending work session list. So we have, 18 items, if I remember rightly, on the work session list. So I want to work through 3 points before we actually dive into this. So the first thing I want to do is, just for sort of technical reasons, point out that the list of strategic plan actions requiring council direction needs to be corrected, because we've already changed some of those, right? Yeah. All right. So then the second has to do with what we need to do with regard to the possible pending items. So we need to winnow the list of 18 proposed work session topics, and I suggest we begin at the top of the list and work our way down. The person who proposed the topic should briefly explain why she or he proposed that topic, and then we'll see if 2 or more, is it 2? Is that right? That we need a total of 3 council members to put something on the work session agenda, or is it 4? It's 3, right? Yeah. So we'll see if 2 or more other council members agree, and or if we can combine the topic with another topic. There are at least a couple I know we can combine. So we'll just work our way down that. And topics that don't receive support from 3 council members will be deleted. That's the way I'm thinking about it anyhow. And then, Jeff, I need to ask you a question. There's also that list of, 13 items, requests for information. Do you want us to work through that list also?
I think if you could just confirm that you're still interested in that. They take varying degrees of time to pull together. Some are very simple and are no problem. Others will take a little bit more time for us to do. So a lot of these were generated in the budget session. If you are not interested in us following up, it saves us time. So if you could just do a quick scan of that, that'd be great. And I apologize for not updating the strategic plan section. The staff is right now going through the implementation plan, so this will change. You'll see this evolve over the next couple of council agendas. So I think you could just dive right into the other topics and not worry about the strategic plan stuff tonight.
Okay, good deal. All right, so the first item is one that's been on the list for a long time, joint meeting with the Telecommunications Commission. I assume we want to keep that. The second is to review,
what-
sorry, what?
I thought we had to have 4 to keep it. I mean,
Oh,
Three,
I'm sorry.
right.
Okay,
Main.
sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to jump too quickly. So I would say, I think we should keep it on there if we can ever get another appointee onto the Telecommunications Commission.
I would too, and I think that grew out of some discussions that I had had about exploring municipal broadband, and to do this as sort of a first step to see whether we should explore that and/or any other topics that they feel are of importance. I think, municipal broadband and technology is an incredible important thing for us to have that conversation. And it's also, as they pointed out, important for them to weigh in before we make even any tentative steps. So I would at least like to have the meeting. And I think that's consistent with having more sort of collaborative meetings with other organizations and other commissions.
I think if you're going to have that discussion, it may be an opportunity to review the role and the scope of the Telecommunications Commission, because really that commission was formed to oversee the local cable franchise agreement, which will be going away in August. So a discussion on what charge, without a local franchise, what charge does the city council want to give that commission? And they probably have some feedback for you on that topic.
Or disband the commission?
Or disband the commission.
Okay.
Yeah, so are there a total of at least 3 who would agree with that as modified by Jeff and what I just said? Okay, we're clear about that?
Yeah.
All right, the next item is review city-funded organizations' commitment to diversity and inclusiveness. I think this was Kingsley's?
Kingsley.
Yeah.
And I really don't have any background on what he was thinking here.
Should we punt on that until he's able to articulate?
I think we have to, because we got to hear from him, yeah. So we'll skip to the third one. Review the 2016, did I type that right? 2016 Police Department's traffic stop update, yeah?
Yeah, what we're suggesting here, we do have the 16 data ready to go, but the 17 data is probably going to be ready in another month or two. So with everything else you have going on, we'd like to combine those into one presentation. And that, you're probably looking, again, a couple of months before that's ready.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, sounds great. So we have enough to do that. The fourth, discuss the scope for Robert A. Lee Recreation Center improvements for that improvement project. Was that yours, Rock?
Well, didn't we already sort of decide that?
Well, you made the budget adjustment to push that project forward, but we need to have the discussion. Are we doing a purpose-built improvement for the bike library? Are we going to open it up for other community organizations? And then I believe there was some desire on the part of Councilman Botchway to look at least examining how we could enlarge the rec center in the future to accommodate other community needs.
I
Yes,
think
he
we
did
should
say that.
have that because I'm supportive of the bike library having sort of that, but I think that before we make that decision, we should allow other organizations to weigh in to persuade us whether that's the proper course.
Yeah, and Kingsley was pretty clear about wanting to consider other possibilities. So, yeah, we need to have that discussion.
So is that just, obviously, you'll need to schedule that when you're ready. I think what would be helpful for us is, are you looking for anything in preparation for that? Do you want us to review the plans with you again in the public? Do you want us to have any conversations with Bike Library or anybody else? Or are we just going to start with a council discussion?
Well, I think an obvious question is what are the alternative possibilities that could be pursued? I mean, we know the bike library is one possibility, and we have sort of a vague notion coming from Kingsley. He may have much clearer ideas, but I don't know. So far, it's a fairly vague notion. I think we'd have to have the alternatives in mind to have any kind of coherent discussion.
We had, at least I remember asking the question is of if we were to proceed, let's assume we proceed with the bike library concept, will that have any long-term impact, and maybe this is what Kingsley was addressing, on any future future renovations or expansions of the building. So that might require some preliminary assessment.
Yeah, and we could walk through all that. Clearly, if you lease a space to another entity, you're going to be removing options off the table for further public use. So, if there's a desire to expand the gym, you can't expand the gym if you've got a lease in the area directly adjacent to it. So some of those conversations are what we're talking about here. We
Do you
can
have
frame it
enough
up. For you. We
guidance
don't need
about
to
that?
decide that. I think I know how to approach it.
Okay. Okay, item 5 is to discuss council member appointments to committees and, with regard to having term limits for those appointments to committees. Maz, I think this was your suggestion.
Which one?
Number 5, having term limits for council member appointments to committees, to council committees.
Yes. I just believe that, all the new people on the councils, they would like to have a turn. If you don't serve on the committee itself, you cannot gain the experience. Like me, I was really, as you know, that I was trying to be on the Economic Development Committee, and 3 of you guys being there, maybe like one of you guys being there more than 4 years. We need to have a turn so we can learn. How can I know about economic development and all the TIF regulation, everything, if I don't exactly have hand on things and serve? That's why we cannot just make the same people serve in the committees, especially like Economic Development Committee, one of the important one for years, without giving chance for the other council.
I'd agree that should be in the work topic.
I personally don't think it needs to be in a work session. I think we can handle that when we do the committee assignments. I mean, to me, that's part of the discussion of committee assignments is who has the interest, who has the expertise, what's the best combination of
But not the
of
term
council.
limit question, right? That's a larger.
But I think you can set limits that ultimately don't give you the best council participation and combination of people on committees. I mean, you can certainly, as we do that organization, every 2 years, that idea of how long somebody has been on and who you've got and what expertise and giving new people the opportunity are things that we should always be taking into account every time we do the reorganization without setting some sort of strict term limit on particular commissions or committees that we're involved in.
I think we should.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think Maz is raising a really important point. How is a new member supposed to understand how our Economic Development Committee proceeds, how it does its work? And I think the real focus is on the Economic Development Committee, not on others. It's pretty hard to learn TIF. I mean, to put it really bluntly, just to focus on one thing. It's hard to understand how that tool gets used and how the varieties of tools that are out there within the term TIF. So without having a chance to serve on the committee, how can an incoming council member develop the kind of knowledge that would enable him or her to act effectively as a council member with regard to economic development policies and actions? I mean, I think that's the key.
And also, why a council member want to stay in one committee for a long time? What's the reason behind that? Let us give chance to other members. That's, to me, is really need to be changed. And by the way, you're saying this is not a work session. I really get confused. We bring something during regular meeting, you say, this is a work session things. We bring it here, and now you're saying this is not a work session. And if you can discuss everything in the work session, why not this? I being hearing a lot of things that I bring. You guys direct me back and forth. Please, be clear. I'm in the learning, steps here.
I think, to me, what the discussion here is whether these items should be on a work session agenda for the future. So we would take a half hour or 45 minutes to discuss this particular issue. What I'm saying from my perspective is I don't believe that we need to sit and talk about spend time in a work session discussing whether we should have term limits. To me, the decision on council assignments to commissions or committees should be made every 2 years when we reorganize after an election, based on the council members that we have at the time, their interest, their expertise, and getting the right combination of people, even in terms of political views. So you've got a mix of people represented on different committees and stuff. Not that you set arbitrary term limits that don't necessarily give you the opportunity. And not every new council member is going to be able to be on the committee or committees that they want immediately coming on council. I mean, 2 years ago, we had 4, well, Jim was reelected, but we had 3 other brand-new committee members, or council members. So do you say, oh, well, all 3 of those have a real interest in economic development, and they need an opportunity to learn, so we put 3 brand-new council members on Economic Development Committee?
We didn't
I
say
don't think-
that, Susan.
No, but I mean, that's the kind of thing, I mean, that's part of the argument you're making, that you're new and you didn't have the opportunity to do that. I'm saying not every brand-new council member is going to get the opportunity immediately
Sure.
to be on every committee that they want.
No, but excuse me, let me just answer Susan on that. Because I've been hearing from you, and I heard last time from the mayor, since I'm new, I don't have to, like, jump on in the Economic Development Committee, need to have experience. And guess who joined that? And when he was new, Rockney. He just become a council and he joined. But I guess it's gonna be different between me and Rockney. Somebody like me, maybe they don't have to serve in that, but Rockney can do it because he's new. I really don't like those 2 coming from you and from Susan too.
As the situation was different, it was different. That said, it seems to me we clearly need to discuss this more thoroughly, and we don't need to do it tonight. So I would recommend that we put this on the work session agenda.
Why are you doing that? This is you guys discussing everything here because I'm the one who proposing it.
No, Maz.
No.
Okay.
I'm saying, let's put it on the work session, the list of pending work session topics. I'm not saying ignore it.
No, the point,
No,
Mazahir.
why not today?
Mazahir, the point was just to go through these to see which one should be a work session topic, not to talk about it this evening. Just kind of why you wanted it on there and then whether it should be. That, right?
So we're agreeing with you
Right.
that
Right,
it should be.
Just like the
Right, but not
telecommunications, these are topics that we say yes or no, let's.
Right.
Yeah, because the
So
first
we're
thing that
saying
Susan said is not supposed to be here. That's why I just get pissed by this.
Yeah, all right, so there clearly are at least 4 people for having it on the pending work session list.
Yes.
Okay. The next is to review the University program and consider expanding to duplex properties. One thing, this was your idea, right, Rock?
And mine.
So- And yours, sorry. Would you all like to just, explain why, and then we'll see if there are at least 3 people who want it on the pending list?
Well, for me, it seemed like it's been a very successful that we've all really supported. We've identified some limitations to it in terms of the cost of properties, and so I wanted to think about whether there's other ways that we could imagine the program that would allow different types of structures. And so I would like to do it on a work session. It doesn't look like we've really cut much off so far. So at least for now, I want to.
Working on it.
We're working on it. But at least for now, I'd like to keep it on.
Yeah, I agree, and I thought that it would be a great idea to open it up to other options, to perhaps have homes that weren't quite as expensive that might be available to folks of lower income.
So a couple of comments. One, when we went through the budget session, we proposed a slight modification to University, which was actually to increase the amount of the purchase price and the renovation amount because we are finding it more difficult to find properties, and we expect to pay a little bit more with the rental cap regulations that went in. Two, the strategic plan has an item to review all of our housing programs and study how those are targeting different aspects of the community and just take a holistic look at how we're investing in the private housing stock. So I think the question for the council on this one is, If you really want to see us expand into duplex and do it quickly, then let's keep it on the agenda and let's get it going. If you're able to wait 6-7 months until we can do our review of the housing programs as a staff and present that to you, you could consider changes at that time, along with changes to GRIP and to Invest Health and any other housing projects we may be.
I could defer till the 6 to 7 months. I think that
too.
makes sense.
I could too,
I think it makes-
as long as we're assured that it will be part of the
It's on your
discussion.
strategic plan. It'll get done.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense to do it comprehensively instead of piecemeal.
So I'll withdraw that.
Is that okay? Yeah. All right, the next one is increase opportunities for the council to engage with city staff and consider a voluntary survey to all employees seeking feedback on city-related issues. I don't know whose idea that was.
It was Kingsley.
Kingsley.
Yeah.
We'll have to come back to that. Number 8, include a calendar of events in the information packet so the council can discuss attendance at city or community events.
That was Kingsley.
That was Kingsley, too. I guess I'd say something about that. There are a lot of events that take place within the city, and it's not entirely clear how one would define something as an event and something else is not an event. You know, some really good performer over at Engler, for example, is that an event? I don't know. So
I think that's a good idea.
Kingsley's not here, so we can't deal with it too much. I'm sorry. What?
But if we cannot just discuss if this is a good idea or not, and we put it there, I think since he put it there, that means he won it. And I think this is a good idea to give us like some kind of sense what's going on in the community. Yeah.
So I wonder, well, yeah. What?
Oh, there he is.
Oh, just in time.
Questions for Kingsley?
We'll take a short break. So we were just going through the pending work session topics, and we had to skip one or two that were yours.
Yeah.
Maybe we can pick up on the one we were just talking about and then go back to another one we had to skip. So tell us when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the one we had just started talking about, Kingsley, was number 7, increase opportunities for the council to engage with city staff and consider a voluntary survey to all employees seeking feedback on city-related issues. So,
So I definitely added that one, and mainly it's because, you know, in my other role, we do, the board has done a survey of their staff to gauge, you know, whether or not they're being a good deliberative body, whether or not they're, you know, enacting policies along the terms of what they want to see in our city. And I mean, I know that many of you have time and to, you know, get out and talk with different city staff. I don't, and so for me, it provides an element that I can, you know, hear from city staff in a collaborative but also collective way and find out what's happening. And I mean, this isn't about Jeff or isn't about, you know, any of our administrators. It's more about us. You know, do you feel like we are embodying the standards of the city of Iowa City? You know, many of the individuals, as we know, because we've been a part of the that potluck and has been 40, sometimes 50 years here, they know Iowa City. They've worked Iowa City. You know, I would love to hear from them about, you know, what that means. I mean, are the strategic planning priorities that we're putting forth something that they're supportive of, something that they can get behind? What are some other things that they would like us to see to do differently? So that's where I was really thinking about the volunteer survey. It's more of a survey of reflecting on us as a deliberative body as far as whether or not, what are we doing? You know, what could we be doing better?
you're the manager of the staff, Jeff. So what's your sense about this proposal?
I don't have any concerns with it. If you want to get feedback, I think you're going to need to be probably pretty specific when you're thinking about what you want to ask about, and you have to understand that most employees are not paying attention to what's going on in this chamber. They're focused on whatever their specific job duty is. Certainly you see the department heads and some of the supervisory staff here on a regular basis. They're going to be engaged, but the more specific you get, the more meaningful the answers will be. We have not done internal employee surveys since I've been here. It's something that we've talked about, Ashley and I have talked about. That would be more on the management side of things and not really focused on what you are all doing, but certainly employee surveys are not uncommon. It's just you need to define what you really want out of it.
I hate to say it, but I sort of don't want to do a work session topic on it. I've had one of mine taken off now too, Kingsley, so maybe you'll get some.
That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Maybe it wasn't a good idea, I don't know. But in the spirit of trying to cut things down, like I felt like I really wanted to do the university program and have more of a substantive, but hey, this is looking long. So I wouldn't support it now.
I guess you make a good point, Rockne, and I hadn't thought of it from that perspective, but as we're trying to pare this list down and think about what can we talk about and what can we do that is most impactful to this community in terms of policies and initiatives and that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't see that as something that comes to the top of the list for me. So to spend the time on that.
Well, and I think for me as well, I don't necessarily know that I want to spend a work session on it. I mean, I just want to do it. And so, I mean, I'm not in favor of actually doing a work session or having a session about it. I mean, I think that we can just do it.
But see, I'm concerned there too as we continue to talk about the time demands on staff and what are the real priorities for staff. They've got to have some feedback of what kinds of questions we're looking for, what kind of information is it that we really want. You talk about getting information from staff on what we're doing as a deliberative body. Those members of the staff that live in Iowa City have the opportunity to make their voices known at the ballot box. For those that don't live in Iowa City, certainly I would agree with Jeff, and having been on council for a while and gone to a lot of those potlucks and talked to people, they're more concerned and interested in their day-to-day work and not what is happening here. And I just am not sure that having our communication staff or whoever else or having to outsource this to develop a survey, I guess what I would want to see first is for you to come back and tell us what it is you really want to hear out of this. What kind of specific information are you really looking for to give some direction before we even considered having staff take time and energy to put together a survey?
Yeah, because we can't just do it, or tell staff to do it. We have to be clear about what kind of information we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, to that extent, I would agree with Jeff. I mean, this is not uncommon at all. I mean, I just brought it up, from a school district standpoint, we survey our students and staff because we want to know what our students and staff are doing. And, to that extent, I think that, the ballot box point is an important piece of that. But, I mean, I think there's also a connection. And when we're talking about community engagement and, wanting to make sure that we're hearing from the broader community, I don't think we can just gloss over what our staff may or may not want to contribute to that message. But I definitely feel comfortable putting together a memo. I mean, taking off the pending list and putting together a memo.
And we can just respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to take me
Okay, that sounds reasonable. All right, so we had skipped over a couple of things that were of interest to you, Kingsley, so we'll go back to them. So item 2 on the other topics part of the pending list is review city-funded organizations' commitment to diversity and inclusiveness.
Yeah, so that one in particular speaks to we put money out for a number of different programs. Would like to see some type of assessment or conversation about what that looks like, whether or not we are truly speaking to and determining the diversity and inclusion that I think is necessary that we all believe in. And so for me, it's more from, I think that Mark from ICAD has come before us before. I think that, as we think about who we give to Summer of the Arts, other organizations that we give, I would say a substantial amount of money to, I just would like to hear about what things you're doing, at least for me, to promote diversity and inclusiveness. Maybe there are other questions from a deliberative body standpoint that we want to ask these organizations, but I mean, that's my particular focus.
So are you suggesting that each organization that receives funding of some kind or other from the city should be asked, what are they doing to promote diversity and inclusiveness?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's a substantial funding amount. I mean, we say $50,000 or more. I mean, I don't want, if we give $1,000 out to individuals, I don't necessarily know that we're asking for, a board presentation, but we're giving a substantial amount of money. I want to know, what that money is being used for and how you are being inclusive. I just think that as we have these conversations and as we're talking about, the racial equity toolkit and wanting to make sure that we're working through a more inclusive process, I want to also make sure that one of the most important things that we do is fund things, and that we're putting that on our partners to have that same conversation and deliberation as well.
I don't see that as too different than we just got in our packet pages and pages of information from the Human Rights Commission, and those folks that apply for the social justice funds have to designate how it's going to apply to inclusiveness and social justice. So I kind of see your point, Kingsley, as far as we're giving even more money to these other organizations, and perhaps they should justify.
So there aren't very many organizations that we give $50,000 or more, right?
No, Summer of the Arts, Englert. I'm struggling after that. ICAD. CVB, that's through kind of hotel motel tax. But we have a set that's 30 and below, probably Riverside Theater, and Film Scene, EDC in Cedar Rapids area. So there's a couple of cutoffs. 50 is a good cutoff. If you're hoping to get some of the smaller groups that we fund, then I'd say you probably need to go down to 20. And it's, that's simple. If it's as simple as writing them and saying, this is an important value of the city, part of the council's strategic plan, please report back to us on how you embody this. We can just do that and report to you as staff.
I personally think that would be a completely reasonable thing to do. For me, the only question is, what's the funding cutoff?
Yeah, I mean, hearing Jeff, if it's $20,000 to incorporate Riverside Community Theater and some of the other places, I would appreciate that. I mean, I would say that from our prior conversations, I was more focused on some of the arts, CVB, ICAD, some of the bigger organizations. But I mean, I know Film Scene does a lot of diversity and inclusion work because I've been there.
Yeah.
So I would like to hear more from them. And so if it's at $20,000, I think that's an appropriate cutoff as well.
We can do that. We'll take it off the list and we'll just report back to you.
Yeah, okay.
I think we'll just compile them all and deliver them at one time, so you're...
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The other thought in my mind is not only how can council better understand their commitment to diversity and inclusiveness or whatever values we want to emphasize, but also the general public. How can the community get a better understanding of its makeup as well? So whatever format or process would further in that regard, I think would be helpful.
All right, good deal. We need to revisit Robert A. Lee, right? That item number 4, because that was something Kingsley had an interest in.
I think
no,
we're good
okay
there.
on that? Yeah, okay. So let's see, that gets us down to item 8, I think.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we're now picking up where we had left off. So item 8, include a calendar of events in the information packet so the council can discuss attendance at city or community events. We're kind of recalling this is your suggestion,
no, it was.
right?
So, I mean, not to use Susan's point, I mean, I think it was a good point to kind of focus on, how do we, I think that was around the...
Well, it was early on. I mean,
What was the
chamber and the chamber.
chamber? So, I mean, the chamber, ultimately...
3 of them going on.
Yeah, how do we just divide and conquer? I think that people want to see city representation at different events. I think I just sent an email to Jeff about another event that's coming up, and saying, is that a city council attended event? Like, how do we just get people out there? And again, I am thinking selfishly of myself because my time is somewhat limited, and so if Pauline was at the groundbreaking for the crisis center. It was good to have city representation. It was good to know that I didn't myself wasn't the only person that was going to be there, that we could have had it. If I'd have known that Pauline was going to be there, I may not have had to go or make some changes. And so for me, it's just maybe clear articulating. How do we make sure we have representation across the broader community? I mean, Jim, I hear I wouldn't say on a daily basis now. I mean, I think it was more before, but, not because I think you're doing less. I think it's just I don't hear as many of the comments, is that, you had done a wonderful job of just getting out to all these different events. I mean, that's a heavy workload, and we've had conversations about that. And so how is Rockne participating in these events? How is Mazahir participating in these events? And so for me, it's just clearly kind of, and it may be an extra, 5 minutes to our council meetings. I know, from a timing standpoint, it's not necessarily the sexiest thing, but I do think it provides an avenue, again, at least for me and then for other counselors as well. If we're going to this event, how about, 2 of us go to this event? If we're going to this event, how about 1 of us goes to this event? I mean, obviously not making a quorum, but just making sure that we're representing.
So right now, at the end of our formal meeting, each council member talks a bit about what they've been doing or what's coming up. So how does what you're suggesting differ from that?
I think it's then at that time designating who is going to go.
Right.
I think ultimately also, Jeff and staff may have more information about events than, I'm looking at my calendar, kind of thumbing through events. That doesn't necessarily represent all the events that may be, that we could go to or participate.
So maybe we could just alter that little bit of our formal meeting. And one thing I'm thinking would be helpful would be for Jeff or staff in general to be alert and tell us about some events that are coming up that they don't hear being mentioned by us. Because I know things fly by me and I don't even know they're happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not talking about every single committee meeting. For example, the UNESCO conversation I think we're having later on, that's one I didn't put in my calendar. And so, if Jeff hadn't sent the email, I may have missed it. We probably would have brought that up, but it'd be nice to have city representation there.
Yeah.
At the council level, not as,
So can we just modify that last step in our formal meeting process instead of having a special work session on this particular topic? Is that okay with you?
That seems to
Okay.
make sense.
All right. All right, let's see, where are we? Item 9, review the farmers market vendor rules and regulations.
Yes, and this.
So this is mine again. I'm just piling on here, sorry. For this particular piece, this kind of came out of the vein of our conversation around, just basically the media and some protests that happened at the farmers market. I think that for me it was, about what we can do. I think Eleanor gave us I don't know if you gave us an email or it was a separate memo packet about kind of what we can and can't do in relation to this particular event, or maybe you just stated something.
I think it was a reaction to that.
It was okay.
Event.
Yeah,
I
and so
told you- we told you what position we were taking and
Right.
why that was constrained by First Amendment issues.
Right. And so to that extent, my question is how do we review or potentially change the policies to make sure that that wouldn't happen or that isn't an issue? And again, I know that, go ahead.
It's constitutional.
I think we had a good, our policy is good, and it's just that how it's applied and how you can apply it constitutionally, that was what was at issue in that case. I don't think we could change our policies and have a different result.
A viewpoint, yeah.
Well, I'm going to throw out a hypothetical. I know you're not prepared for this because I didn't necessarily talk to you ahead of time. So, if the KKK decided to, put a cross, sell crosses at the farmer's market, that would be okay?
Well, we don't, you'd have to look at whether it fell into what is allowed to be sold at the farmer's market, and all the other regulations that exist for the farmer's market. But if you wanted to exclude the KKK purely because of what their speech is or that would be a problem. If they met all the other criteria for the farmer's market.
I guess I thought it was a different interpretation around hate speech and other things that are prohibited by the First Amendment. So,
Well, think of the case many years ago of the Skokie, Illinois situation, where you had the KKK walking down the street of a very, a Jewish town, a high Jewish population. Certain public spaces, you don't have that authority. Now, the farmer's market is is different than a street because we say you can only be here doing certain things,
Right.
right? But if you're there doing those certain things and you meet all the other criteria, then you can't deny them that because of what their message is. I mean, I think it's unlikely that there would be a need at the farmer's market, or it would be a high priority for us to be selling crosses. We have a limited number of vendor spaces. We have...
Well, that was a hypothetical. I was using the most extreme case.
So, I mean, I think that's unlikely that scenario would come to be,
Right.
because there's probably not a real demand for crosses, wooden crosses. And so a lot of those situations are going to be dealt with simply by the limits of the farmer's market and what gets sold at the farmer's market and what the priorities are. But we're not going to write a policy that says, any organization who believes or supports A, B, C, and D, if it's not violence and it's not, it's not otherwise unlawful under the hate speech codes of the state codes, we can't do that.
Is that the same with if they even had written material and just had a table outside, weren't necessarily a vendor, but like some of our political candidates that just have a table outside the farmer's market and have literature?
Well, that's a whole other issue,
Right.
because that is a public forum, because we allow anybody to set up in those spaces. So, and we have cautioned that once you do that, once you open it up to, the farmer's market rules don't apply in those spaces. So that clearly is a public forum. That's more like a street. And if they want to be there, they can be there.
Yeah, so on this particular point, when I attended the Mayor's Innovation Project event last August, we had an extensive discussion about this, and the key point I heard was it's really crucial to separate people from one another. So if there's somebody like the KKK that wants to demonstrate or whatever they're going to do, and there's somebody else who wants to demonstrate against them, you got to keep them separate from one another. But you can't say, no, you cannot express, we can't limit your ability to speak freely, or you can't limit your free speech rights. But you got to keep people separate, otherwise you're going to end up in physical conflict.
So can we...
And I think the other issue about what happened at the farmer's market is the conduct that was being complained about was off-site. I mean, it
Right.
wasn't on-site. That's a huge distinction.
I think just to close the point, I think for me, I was looking at it from a standpoint of it's a city regulated function. In my role, I would make determinations potentially on candidates based on, if they were potentially saying something that could be hate oriented, or, I think there's been even national news around, situations where individuals' Facebooks or things that they said along those lines have been, used to potential, termination of employment. And so I was looking at it from a city-regulated function. I get the protest and the street piece, and I wasn't thinking about that from a standpoint. I was more focused on if there was any way that we could, enact or place policies around it. But if there's not, then I've followed up in the way that I said I would follow up on.
I think if the event you're using as an example is the one that happened last summer, I don't think there is something. Okay.
So let's see if there are 3 people supporting the idea of having this as a special work session on this topic. I don't think we need to do it.
Well, I don't support it now.
Okay.
It's a discussion, yeah.
We can talk, Kingsley, we can
Yeah.
talk more if you want.
Okay. Item 10, I'll note, item 10 and item 13 are pretty much the same thing. So item 10 reads, discuss near and long-term plans for autonomous vehicles. Now, Jeff, I know you've had some conversations with people, I think, in urban and regional planning about this. Do you want to say a few words about this?
Yeah, we've worked with the School of Urban Regional Planning. We're going to have a summer intern in the manager's office, and this will be one of the primary tasks, is really to do some research on kind of what the leading thoughts are on the impact of autonomous vehicles on city design and operations, so that we can better understand what some of the industry experts are projecting and maybe slightly adjust operations or whatever we need to do to prepare. And then we'll consider maybe doing some public education on autonomous vehicles as well, and perhaps even some staff training, depending on what types of information we're finding.
Didn't we already nix this? I thought we did.
No, we nixed it from the strategic plan
Okay.
list,
Okay.
not from pending work sessions. I think it ought to remain on the list of work session topics, but months from now, after the students come up with information, et cetera. But I don't know, are there 3 people who agree?
Well, given what Jeff just said, it seems like that would be an opportunity to hear from
Just get a
staff
report
on it.
back then.
Okay.
I don't agree, so I'm a no.
Is that a report from the council, or is that a memo or a report to us?
We could summarize his findings from his internship and send it to you, and you can decide if you want to act any further then, at that point. Or you leave it on. It doesn't really matter to me.
Well, actually, let's just take it off and get the report, and then we can decide if we really want a work session at that point.
I'm fine with that. I like Jeff's initiative on this.
Okay.
So that gets rid of item 13 also. Item 11, review the consumption-based emissions study and discuss how to incorporate findings into our policies, procedures, and codes. I'd like to say our Climate Action Steering Committee is coming pretty close to giving us a final draft report or plan. And it's the kind of thing we'd actually want them to be looking at, I think. So I think it's important. It's worth discussing,
I think
but I
it's
don't know.
very
I
important.
don't know that we have to have a work session discussion about it. I'm happy to, but I don't know that we need to. Do you have opinions about this?
Well, we probably should. They're going to make a series of recommendations, and then we're going to have to say whether that's going to be city policy or not, right? I mean,
Two different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was a emission study that we completed, it was grant funded that we completed, and I think we sent the results out a few months ago. The Climate Action Steering Committee is working on a separate plan that will be informed in part by this study. Clearly, when they're done with their report, you're going to want to have some work session time to hear from them and sift through the report. This is just a little different.
Okay. Ashley?
I was just going to say, clarify, this is a consumption-based emission, so it's specific to consumption, whereas the climate plan will kind of take all of our emissions into consideration and provide recommended actions. So they are finishing, subcommittees are in full swing with review of the initial draft, so you'll be hearing a little bit more about that. Plan is April release of the final draft of the plan, and then there'll be a presentation to council with the climate action plan likely in May, and then at that point we would start whatever actions you decide to implement and prioritize based on the recommended actions. So there are components as far as food and transit and other things that are mentioned within this consumption study, but it's not based specifically on our consumption here. So we could do a presentation if you like on specifically this study, or combine it in some way, or whatever you have interest in.
Yeah, so it's not just a standard emission inventory, which we already have and have had for quite a few years. But I think the crucial thing at the moment is to get this plan from the steering committee and figure out how we want to proceed with that. It may be we will want to revisit the consumption-based inventory once we hear from the steering committee.
so let's then cut it for now.
Sorry?
You said you wanted to cut it for now then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, the next one is review alternative revenue sources. Yep, I think we should do that.
Yep.
Agreed.
Number 13, review expert thoughts and I already did that, sorry. Number 14, create a new student internship program to assist interested council members. This is my suggestion, so I'll make a case for it. I don't know if any other council members are interested in having an intern work with you individually, but I was thinking it might be a really good opportunity to connect with people either at Kirkwood or at the University of Iowa, draw them into the process of council decision-making, and enable them to learn about what we do, how we do it, and also get help from them on particular topics. I can tell you I've been an intern for an alderman down in Louisville, Kentucky, and, you know, I don't know if it was of any help to that alderman at all. But also, I think it's kind of hard to figure out exactly what you want somebody to do because you don't know if they're capable of doing it. You don't know if they know enough. So you can spend a lot of time just sort of churning your wheels, talking with the intern, trying to figure out what the intern can do, what the intern can't do. So, I mean, I like the idea, but it's not a straightforward, obvious thing to do. I wonder if you all have thoughts about it. And this is just about getting it on the work session topics, not about deciding what to do.
I like the idea, but I just want to ask you, what do you think? You think like the student will help, or if we just like will help us? Because sometimes I feel the student, maybe they don't have a lot of knowledge to help you on this kind of things, especially they are just a student and they are focusing on certain things. But I don't know how you can tweak it and make it like there is many knowledgeable people in this community that could be volunteer and help city council members in certain things. Either they know a lot about how the things is being doing because they being attending city council meeting, or maybe they being like watching it. Like somebody like you, like me, I did not born here. I didn't grow up knowing things about city council, and when I came new to this country, the last things on my list was knowing about city council because I have a lot of things to navigate through first. That's why I think there is many knowledgeable people in this community that could be volunteer. I don't know how you can call it, but it will be the same thing. They will be maybe interesting on helping like certain city council member navigate, especially when they are new, navigate through everything. I really get hard time to know a lot of stuff here, what the work session, what the, like something on the beginning, what should I speak on, like specifically on the work session, you know, a lot of things. But if a student cannot help me on that, but maybe a community members who are really interesting and knowledgeable about this could be as help, but I don't know how you can. This is a student churchship, but I don't know.
Would it also be, are you thinking, say, we as a council person didn't have knowledge about something like complete streets or zoning things,
Sure.
that they could research that and help us with that, give us that knowledge?
Yeah, you know, we're here too, and that's our job. That's our job to get you information that you need. I would advise if it's more along those lines, if it's understanding zoning or TIF or complete streets, talk with me and we'll set you up. We've got 600 plus employees that are experts in their individual fields. We can spend the time to get you up to speed. If you're looking for somebody that's more working on the political side of things, whether that's outreach, so that you have a better understanding of certain constituent groups, then maybe something like this works. But I think if you've got technical questions, I'd encourage you to come to us.
Okay, so be clear, all we're trying to figure out is if whether 3 people who want to have a work session discussion about this.
I would like to cut it from the work session because I really think we need to have focus on these other topics, which are incredibly meaty issues. My preference would be that this be done through the staff in terms of internships. So I think it's a good topic, but that's my vote. I think we have to prioritize what's on here because we already have a lot, and these are very meaty issues.
John, Susan, what do you all think?
I agree with Rockne.
Yeah, I think we can cut it.
Okay, let's cut it.
You cut it means like you are not going to do it or
Not
talk
gonna-
about
not
the
gonna
stuff
do a
about it?
Work session.
We're not going to do a work session discussion. about it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, the next is consider increasing the salary and benefits for council members effective in January 1st, 2020. This, again, was my suggestion. I think if we're going to do something like this, we clearly need to have a work session discussion about it.
I'd agree.
Yes.
Agree.
All right, so we'll keep that on the list. 16, consider a plan for rubberized surfacing at park playgrounds. this is something we pulled out of the strategic plan element.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about this list that's, further up on our pending work session topics, but it's included in there.
But it shouldn't be, because we deleted that from the strategic plan element and put it in this pending list of work
Okay.
session topics.
Well, actually, I mean, the 16 and 17 are kind of combined. I would say we could, what I would like to see is combine them. I see them as interrelated. Because as I had said before, my thought with that was that this seemed to be a pretty controversial issue with the school district. In my own professional experience, the rubberized surfacing. Pardon me?
I wouldn't say pretty, I'd say very controversial issue.
Yes, very.
Rubberized surfacing is, the highest standard in terms of accessibility. So I understand the cost implications of our more typical approach with that FIBAR material. But I do think there may be a place for it as part of this larger discussion where we would be talking about destination parks and equity, because in effect it's kind of an equity issue. I mean, we're talking about accessibility. And it's not just for the children, it's for anyone who's in that facility, a grandparent or whoever.
Sure.
I'd say let's leave it on.
Would you be open to having the Parks Commission start it and for them to study it, talk about it, and give you their thoughts?
Yes.
And then we could talk
Start
about
that
it.
Like a joint meeting.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Item 18, discuss IP number 6 from the March 1st packet regarding recommendations from Black parents on youth needs. So that's a consequence of Pauline's and my meeting with a number of Black parents and what we wrote up about that. I think it's worth discussing, for sure.
There were a number of issues brought up and
Yeah.
concerns and possible things that we can do in the city, and so I think we really need to.
Yeah, okay, we got nodding heads. Okay. All right, I'm looking at the time. I don't know that we can go through this pending requests of staff, Jeff.
If you could just eyeball it really quickly, and if there's anything in there that you're kind of thinking, maybe we don't need that.
I guess I'm not sure we need the first one. I'm not sure that recently completed transit studies from other cities are going to translate here. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I just don't know if it's worth staff's time to get that information.
I would hope that kind of thing would be a part of the transit study that
Studies,
we're
yeah.
initiating anyhow. So
That's,
We don't
yeah.
need a work, we don't need other
Yes.
Okay,
direction.
so throw that one out. I'm not really sure, maybe Dennis can answer this in a really quick one. I mean, are the federal tax law changes, I mean, we've talked a little bit about some of the
There's some
affordable
tax-
housing issues.
Yeah, there's some tax credit
Issues.
issues there. There may be others. I haven't personally
Okay.
dug into that.
maybe if it's directly relevant, maybe we could learn about that in the context of other revenue sources, that work session discussion.
Okay, I agree. There may be some state tax reform that has more.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Efforts to green our fleet.
That was kind of in our budget information, wasn't it? I mean, just at least some of the costs related to that. I'm not sure what more somebody's looking for. I mean,
I guess I would like, this wasn't my request, but I think that's a component that's going to be critical for us as we sort of set the standard. And I think that'd be really interesting to a lot of people looking into the green technology. So I would at least like to keep it in or get that information.
It might have been, was it mine?
Go ahead.
I don't remember who.
It seems like a short memo could be
Yeah.
It
adequate.
could also be incorporated in the exploration of the climate action plan. So there are items there for, alternative vehicles and things like that. So
I say nix it and then make it incorporate it within that.
Incorporate
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Tree Advisory Board, you're already doing stuff on that, right, Jeff?
Yeah, it's in motion. Parks Foundation's part of your strategic plan.
So you'll provide us with some feedback about that at some point?
Okay.
haven't we had, like in the senior center annual report, their breakdown of membership by city already?
Yeah, we typically give that to you, I think, when we accept the county grant.
We do have that information ready too, so we can provide that to you.
Okay. I think it wasn't an entire topic just to get that information, since they changed their membership fees. I kind of wanted to see if that really affected our membership.
Yeah.
Send a memo.
I don't know about number 6. Number 7, we have a strategic plan element about using social media more effectively, so I would think that would be a part
I
of
think
it.
this is mine, so, yep, if we can put a part of that. Good. I think that the anticipated steps needs, maybe number 8, maybe can focus on it from, I think we've talked about in our strategic plan as far as being, transportation in general, around the transit study, the bicycle master plan, and some other things. And so,
Adequate funding for the bicycle master plan, yeah, that'd be part of that.
Okay. No separate report?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, we're just basically going to be reapplying, correct? Isn't that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Item 9, I think it would be helpful to get something about forecasting roads resurfacing projects. That sounds like a useful bit of information.
Can do that.
Didn't we get that though? I thought we got that a while back, where it was like red and areas that we were going to hit.
We have a street condition map that shows where the greatest needs are.
Okay.
We can forecast where we think we may be resurfacing in a couple of years. The caution I gave you during budget is once you show somebody that the road's going to be resurfaced in a couple of years, it's really hard to bump them for some other priority comes up, because it's, they just become attached to that notion. So we're going to be putting some information out there, what we think we will be doing or recommending to you. You just have to understand there might get some pushback if we don't follow that schedule.
Yeah, I like the word might.
Yeah. But we can tell you at least where we think the greatest needs are in the community.
It may be possible to present it in a way where you wouldn't be street-specific.
Yeah.
It may be just
do like a high, low.
by category of, the need.
Yeah. Item 10, the city council district boundaries to the CIP map. I don't see much value in that.
I don't really either. I mean, I don't think
You're a
any.
district representative.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think. In the 8 years I've been on council, I've never seen a council member vote on something based on the district that they represent, if they're a district, if they come out of a district. I don't think you ever have, Jim. I certainly haven't in the last couple of months. People don't tend to think in those terms much, except at election time.
I'd agree.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's see, the participatory budget research.
It's done. It's ready to go. It'll probably be here next
so
week.
we'll
Oh,
get
good. I
that.
was going to say, leave that in.
Yeah.
Take it out.
It's already done.
All right, report on temporary use of right-of-way for construction projects. I think that seems to me to be of interest and value. We need to get some feedback about that.
And explain our process.
I mean, there's a memo that we had on that within the last year or two, I think, that, because there was complaints, I think, over here on Iowa Avenue. You
just had
probably
so
can
much of it over the
dust off that memo.
Yeah. We'll look for
if
that.
people really want it.
Okay.
That's true.
And the last, well, so you're gonna take care of that. So the last item has to do with Lusk Avenue. And really, it's update on progress. I think we need to do that. I
Oh,
would
yeah, big
recommend.
time.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right, we can't do any more. We have to take a
We
break.
need to get to the item on the next meeting, because we've got some, if you're going to change the date of it, we've got some
right.
public hearings we'll need to change.
So what's the question before us?
Well, I think, doesn't it happen kind of at the same time?
Is it the
There's a
city of
time
literature?
conflict
Oh,
with the
for
City
the
of
April
Literature.
3rd meeting, right? Can we shift that to our meeting to April the 2nd, Monday?
I guess the room's open.
It works from a staff perspective.
Works for me.
I personally won't be here, but Ashley and Simon would be just fine. They can.
Would work for me.
Ross, is that okay with you?
Monday the
To
2nd.
shift our next meeting, our next meeting to April the 2nd?
Tuesday the 3rd to Monday the 2nd.
1 second.
Yes. Right.
Okay with you, Pauline?
Yes.
Susan?
Works
okay?
for me.
Yeah,
Works for
yeah,
me.
yeah, it's okay with
I think
me.
I'm out, though, on that.
You are?
So, yeah. I have a panel on that night with Nicole Hannah-Jones that I said I was participating in.
We should try to make it for all the counselors then. I mean,
So are we going to the 2nd? Is that where we're at?
With the majority, I think it says in the second.
Yeah, I think we should. It's either that or move it to the 10th of April.
Yeah, the only thing I had was the 9th. I put throughout the 9th on my notes.
That you have the 9th available?
Yeah.
I can't do the 10th.
Can we do the 9th?
1 second.
We talked about that. We can change the award date. What's that?
The question is the PedMall project.
Right, it's set for award on the 3rd, but we can, the notice to bidders and the resolution says, or at some other special meeting date. We're not tied into that, April. Kelly asked me about that today. I think we're okay on that.
Okay. I will leave it at the second. I just sent an email out literally an hour ago about playground stuff related to the 9th, so that's dead. So at the second. And I can't do the 10th.
it's a nice
But on the
work for you.
4th.
Sorry, what's dead, Kingsley?
Well, I just mentioned the fact that I said the 9th, but that was literally an hour. I just sent something out that I would not be available the 9th, and that was just when I did my work previously. And so the second would be the best day. I have to talk with them as far as whether or not it could work. Not being here or
Okay,
something.
so
So go with the
we'll go with the second?
Second.
Can I, Ron, is there a problem just for you to be ready to award on the 2nd? I don't think so. Okay.
The second would be better. Because then we have a player we're doing.
Doesn't read later anymore. I remembered that too, so I checked it. Okay.
All right, we can stop there. We're going to pick up the City of Literature Conference when we get back together after the formal meeting. So let's pick up with the City of Literature Conference. Did somebody intend to say something about this, Ashley? I mean, you're looking at me like maybe you're going to say something.
No,
No?
I have been part of the planning committee, so just kind of keeping track logistically of all the things that are going to be happening. John and Rachel at City of Literature have been doing a really great job of planning this, and we're looking forward to bringing all these cities in. And I asked John for a list of activities that council should feel welcome to participate in, and we shared that in our information packet. So if you guys have questions about any of that, I'm happy to share what I know.
So there's a reception on the night of Tuesday, the 3rd, which
Yes.
conflicts with our regularly scheduled council meeting night. It's from 6 to 8 in Old Capitol, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Brockney, do you have anything you want to add?
Additional details, no.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I guess there's not much we need to say about that then, huh? It should be a major event, though. I can't remember exactly how many cities of literature there are, 20 some odd?
Mid-20s.
Yeah.
That will be participating and traveling here. Not all of the cities could come just due to travel costs, but most of them will be here. We'll also have the U.S. cities, the UNESCO cities of arts and culture will be here as well earlier in the week. I think they're coming in over the weekend and having a business meetings, and may also be at the reception. So.
I'm hoping that the director of the Baghdad City of Literature is going to be here, Sadak Mohammed. He helped us a great deal on our trip there last May. I hope he can get his visa and get here. I don't know where
Last
that.
I heard, I think he's coming, but I'm not 100%, so.
No, I think we facilitated some things, but there were some steps he had to take, and so I don't know where that stands.
It was
Okay, so we don't need to discuss that anymore, right? Okay, so let's move. We're going to skip clarification of agenda items, I think, except maybe one item, which I want to bring up to you.
I have one too.
Okay, the one I wanted to bring up is item 2E5, which concerns an email from Karen Southard concerning the follow-up to Lusk Avenue, to the Lusk Avenue discussion that we had a couple or 3 months ago. So she, as the chair of the Manville Heights Neighborhood Association, she wants us to address 4 objections that neighbors have made concerning, well, what's the what? Well, objections that they made several months ago and which we did not address in our discussion. And I want to remind you of something I wrote in the memo I shared with you prior to that discussion, and which I also said publicly. At that time, I wrote and said, "We will not be second-guessing the technical actions and judgments of individual city staff members or relitigating decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment, the Board of Appeals, or the District Court. Likewise, we will not be discussing claims of misbehavior on the part of individual staff members." It appears that Karen is asking us to revisit some of those questions, and Eleanor and I discussed this via email yesterday, I guess. And it's my understanding, Eleanor, that the questions or topics that Karen is proposing are the same ones that were presented several months ago.
They are.
Yeah, and don't raise any new issues. They're just the same topics. And those topics were all addressed in the memo that you and Jeff both gave us, attached at the very end, in which you stated, tell me if I'm wrong, you stated basically that each of those topics had been addressed by the courts or by the various boards. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
So,
I should add one thing. She did raise the issue of the new sewer being put in by the, she didn't seem to have a question about it, but she just.
she noted it, right.
The new sewer put in,
Yeah.
and that was a decision on part of the property owner to put that sewer in.
Yes, she definitely did that. So my question to you basically is, what do you prefer that we do in response to Karen Southard's request? Nothing or something? And if there's a something, what would it be?
Something, but not responding directly to those points. I had thought that what had happened. Decisions were made based upon existing policies, and we were going to look prospectively to allow our staff the technical authority to either tripwire in the sense of notifying us and to develop in close consultation with them the lightest regulatory footprint we can use, because they have not wanted the more extensive one, to work through that with them and possibly with other neighborhoods, but they were the ones that are directly affected by that, so that they would have the tools to prevent that from happening. So I think we shouldn't address, that was my sense too, Jim, is that it seemed like it was a point very well written, but very into the past. And I don't think we're going to get anywhere by focusing on that, but to look prospectively. So do we need another work session on that? Or what do you think? Because I thought that we were going to have some suggestions based upon the work session that we'd have that would be this tripwire, the light regulatory footprint.
That was the last item in the list of work sessions that we addressed earlier this evening. Yeah, so we will
that's
get an
how we
update
address
on
it.
that. Yeah.
Well, I would say, because this is it was a substantial issue, some type of response to that end. So I don't know if it's an email from you or Jeff or whoever, or maybe it's more from you. In my memo, I mentioned, you had mentioned these points in the past. In my memo, I stated these things as we move forward. At our last, I remember actually talking to Karen after the meeting, I think, and stating that we are, or after the work session, I think, saying we are going to move forward. And so I think it's just being clear about the fact that that's coming up in a upcoming work session, and I mean brief and just responding in some sense. But I think I agree with Rockne's point. Ultimately, these things have been addressed. I appreciate you bringing these concerns again. We're moving forward, but we're going to highlight that work session that we're going to have continual conversations around what we can do to move the conversation in a better way.
Well, I think a response from you reflecting exactly what you said and what Rockne said, and as far as what came out of the work session, that, if there are red flags that the staff find and they'll bring to us so that it can prevent anything like this in the future. But I think responding to them is important, responding to her is important.
Okay, I can do that. I just wanted to know that I'd be acting on behalf of the council rather than just me.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And I would just encourage you to involve Eleanor maybe in that memo as well, just from the standpoint that this has been.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
I was just encouraging the mayor to involve you maybe in reviewing that memo that would go to Karen, just from the standpoint that there's been litigation involved with this, and just confirming that whatever is sent works in terms of not opening us up to anything else.
I'm happy to do that.
All right. Was there something?
The
you
quick
wanted-
thing I had was 2E3. So I didn't see a response there. I know that this is something that I've had some prior communication about the massage parlors, some prior communication back and forth with the chief, and so I guess to that end they are working on it, but I didn't know if we could respond to Dina.
Yeah, Captain Kelsey with the police department has been in touch with the folks that have been calling. We've had 2 or 3 inquiries. There was some media attention on a case up in Cedar Rapids that kind of spurred this issue down here, and he's responding to all the inquiries that we're getting.
I was going to mention that also, Kingsley, because someone had actually brought it up to me a few months ago, and I think I'd asked you about it, Jeff, if you'd heard anything about it, and at that time I don't think you had, but
Yeah.
I was going to see if Chief Maserly could update us.
Police is still working on the case.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, since it's sort of an active case, we really can't talk about it.
Yeah, I don't
much,
think we'd talk about it here now. I think at some point in time we can talk about how the police approach those types of issues, because they're not always straightforward, and law enforcement's not always the best answer. Sometimes we take a zoning approach to those matters, and we can get a more effective outcome. So it's a collaboration between a couple of different departments right now.
I'd like to make sure we distinguish between licensed massage therapists and massage parlors. There is a substantial difference, and there are a lot of very good licensed massage therapists in this city, and it's a very important part of stress reduction, et cetera. So we should make sure we don't confound the two.
Yeah, and we really focus on human trafficking. That's really what it is. Yeah.
Concern. Right.
Okay, anything else with regard to the agenda? If
I
not,
guess,
I'm sorry.
I want to mention for the, the item 2E4 about the deer on the Hickory Hill Park. I know this, they concerning about how a lot of deer there, but also we received some emails about some people against this, and I don't know what you guys thinking to do on that, or usually would, I don't know.
Well, basically, we left it, at the last meeting, that they would move forward, Liz Ford and the police would move forward on reconvening a deer commission, and then also going to the DNR. I happened to talk to Liz and Captain Campbell after the meeting, and they both commented that they didn't think the DNR would give us permission to do anything unless we already had the Deer Commission, back in place and was looking at stuff. So it's, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. The takeaway from the council conversation that we had and the direction I've given the police department is that you are interested in a reduction this year if possible. By gun, not by bow. So we're working on that now. We don't know if that's possible or not. We don't know how we're going to be received by the state. At the same time, we'll work to reestablish the task force, but the task force we're not really establishing that group and getting their opinions on whether to move forward this year. It's more, how do we continue to manage it after this year's reduction. So if there's any hesitation, you need to let us know, because the direction for PD is get in front of the commission and let's make our best pitch and see what they say.
Well,
Sounds good.
Yeah,
I wanna move
I wasn't
forward.
certain on that as far as what the agreement was on the deer reduction or what method would be used, because I think I've heard a lot of the anti-gun and kill method, so I don't know that we were all in agreement.
There's no
on that.
options. I mean, I thought we
we
pretty much
agreed,
came to
right.
agreement on that, yeah.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I just say like when somebody like starts sending you emails and how we can respond to that, and I guess everybody received the same email I did.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, just usual. And people some people will meet me on the street and tell me about the same thing. I know we already start asking for investigating of the sharpshooter or how you call it.
Quite frankly, is the most humane way to do it. It really is. Otherwise, you're going to get overpopulation, they're going to starve, they're going to get sick.
When I
It's
saw
most
the
humane.
picture, it's really
It's the kind of thing that can stimulate a lot of very emotional disagreement.
I appreciate that. I missed that part, and so it helps me.
And I wish we didn't have to do it, but obviously the public safety issue is huge too,
So we're not going to have to adopt a resolution.
The process for moving forward is a bit unclear because we are the only city in Iowa that chooses to go with this method. Everybody else uses a deer management zone with bow hunting. So the state has not seen this since we were, back in front of them 10 years or so ago with this issue, and a lot of those state employees are now gone, and we've got new faces in there. So we're still trying to figure out exactly what they're going to require. They may punt back to us and say, we want you to get that commission established and we want them to weigh in. They may want a formal council resolution. We don't know. So we'll keep you posted, but we're navigating that now.
Okay. Anything else on the agenda packet? All right, let's go to the info packet discussion, the March 8 packet.
Just on that, on IP2, what you had submitted, Rockne, just for clarification for the public, that is information that came from Bill Gerhardt, is that correct?
That's right, yep.
Okay, because I got the same stuff. I just clarify the source of it, that's all.
Thank you for that information, because I think, as I'd mentioned, we've got the MPO meeting coming up next Wednesday, the 28th, and I believe we're going to talk about that again. So it's helpful to have some information to discuss it with, and whether we should come on a consensus of how we will present ourselves or speak to that. Okay.
Did you share that with the rest of the NPO?
I don't think I did, no. I mean, it was just in the packet.
Okay.
You should.
I thought it was in the material that you got.
It was, but I don't think that one included all the data, at least is my recollection. That also included the wage rates. So, and I think I had sent that out just after the other memo, so there was a little bit of duplication, but.
Okay, any other items? All right, so how about the next packet, with the 15th?
Before I sent the information about the tiny homes, I just recently visited a friend in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and she just randomly said, "Oh, do you want to go see our tiny homes project?" And I said, "Well, sure," because I was very interested in that. And the pictures don't really do them justice. It's really a very, very nice development, and is not meant for families with 4 children. It's meant, as the memo stated, or the article, for maybe single moms with 1 or 2 children, homeless veterans, those kinds of folks. And it's in a previously really run-down part of Bartlesville. Literally, as my friend would say, is across the tracks. There's a railroad track that divides the east side and the west side of Bartlesville. And someone decided to, and the homes were very run down or even abandoned. And so someone took a whole section, a large couple acres part of land, and decided to do this, to build these homes. And they're anywhere from 500 to 800 square feet. And they have porches, and there's going to be a green space in the center courtyard with a green space, and very well designed. And then there's the other development that had the even smaller, like a cabin, really tiny cabin that's going to be very tiny for probably just one person in another part of that part of the west side of town. So it was really kind of fun to see.
Yeah, I appreciated it. One of the things, I think there's another project in Michigan that focuses on, smaller lot sizes, and, I don't think they call it tiny homes, but looking at how you can potentially kind of, talking about both your issues in a sense where you have property that can be used rent to own, and then something that you can sell later on for equity later on. So it's, excuse me. So as we think about or have that affordable housing conversation, I think there's some new ideas I think we may want to discuss to kind of freshen up kind of where we're going from an affordable housing perspective.
Yes, I saw the same thing in Virginia, where the developer will develop like many townhouses, but like 2 of them in the middle, like I guess it will be less than the others. Will be sold like affordable, but because I know many people that I know, they get that program and they have those kind of houses. Like the whole thing will be really market price, and few of them inside will be different. I guess if we can look at those methods, use them here, will be great too.
Just a few facts about Bartlesville. I looked it up, and the median household income is only $51,000, so it's not a real high income. Despite there are those with the Phillips Petroleum Company that are the wealthier folks, and the average house is $123,000. So it's not a real high income, high price area. And all the homes, they're slab homes. There's no basements because of the limestone in the ground. So they wouldn't be any different than others not having a basement.
If somebody gonna talk about IB7,
Wait a
let me know.
minute, can we stick with this for a second?
Yeah.
IP4, yeah. Just hang with it for a second. I was
thought
wondering
you done.
whether, huh?
I saw you done.
Yeah, okay.
I was wondering whether our zoning and building codes would permit construction of such houses in Iowa City. And I don't know what the answer is to that, and just curious.
I'd have to look at it a little bit more detailed. My guess is, or maybe our minimum lot size may be a little too big for something like that, but
I think it could be done as a planned development overlay. But what comes up with cottage clusters, that type of thing, is if you do have, a code written specifically for that purpose, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
So there's more certainty in terms of getting it approved.
Yeah, so if I remember rightly, construction costs for a new house are something like $120 per square foot. So a 500 square foot thing would be, what is that, $60,000 to build?
I don't know those numbers
Yeah, I mean,
that well.
that's
but-
not far off, but I don't know if it's exactly right. Okay, well, we don't need to go into that in great detail. What were you going to go into?
No, I just would like to say if someone want to discuss IB7, let me know so I can excuse myself. That's all.
Yeah, I do want to talk about IP7.
I also want to talk about IP7.
Oh, you got to recuse yourself.
I have to go if you want to start that.
So, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for the committee for their work on this. It's amazing to see kind of a proposal get some legs and take off in our community. And I think the additional funding we allocated from a budgetary standpoint will help develop this. I will say there's a couple of things, not about the projects that were proposed, but just as we move forward. And I don't necessarily know if this is a work session or I'm just going to bring the points up and maybe want to discuss later on. I do want to make sure that when we're thinking about the projects as they move forward, that there's some type of understanding or criteria around funding new projects. And so I think that was a part of the things that were proposed, and I'm supportive of the ones that were proposed, but to me, I see it as being a part of different grant things. There's a tendency to, continually fund certain projects, and just want to make sure this particular kind of funding that we're funding, new projects every year. Just making sure that we're expanding on the ability for individuals to do social justice and racial equity work throughout Iowa City. And so that would be my first kind of discussion on maybe proposing some different criteria. And then the second being, and this has just been a clear focus that I've tried to focus on very intently, especially, as I start, or as this is a new term, a higher focus on the demographic the communities are serving, in particular the compounding marginalization of some of our residents in Iowa City. And so, low income, person of color, identifies as LGBTQ, veteran, with a disability. I mean, I do think that I want to make sure that our money is speaking to our, I'd say compound marginalization. I mean, another term that's frequently used is, intersectionality, that we're focusing the money in those areas. And again, I don't have any problem with the projects that were put forth, but as I was reading them, it was just making me think about the fact that I don't want to have the conversation later that we didn't think about that or didn't put that in the process ahead of time. So those are just my 2 points from a criteria standpoint. But again, the projects, loved, definitely supportive and thankful for what the committee did.
I would agree with you, Kingsley, not necessarily on what you want to see for future criteria, but I do think before we put this out another year, I do think the council should have a more detailed conversation about the criteria that we want the Human Rights Commission to use in assigning. But that's for a work session down the road.
Kind of along those lines, I just want to thank Stephanie and the commission for including the information about, 33 submissions. So we had some idea of what they were asking for, what they were requesting, how much, and what they were going to use the monies for, because I don't know that we'd gotten that information before. And it was kind of helpful to see that, and so many efforts being made out there in the community to address the inequities and help individuals that mentally, physically, or financially need some help. And it also very much showed that $25,000 just is inadequate for what the needs are out there.
And yet at the same time, I would say, while there were some very, very strong applicants, there were some that I wouldn't fund if I had $1 million. I mean, just quite frankly.
Right, and I think the commission had mentioned once that, perhaps the applicants should know that they can't be asking for all $25,000 or even $10,000 or $50,000, which some of them did ask for quite large amounts.
I didn't actually double check, but I did, and I meant to do this, and I apologize. I noticed the submissions were numbered starting number 6 through 33. So I don't know if we missed 5 in the packet, or...
That was the 5 that they had
Yeah,
given
I only
them funds
counted
to.
28. Yeah, so I don't know.
And I don't, maybe that's all there were 28, maybe I'm not, and I apologize, I didn't take the time to go back and double check that, but...
We'll double check. I didn't notice that.
So I have thoughts that are quite similar to some of what's already been said. First of all, I think we need to provide the commission, well, first of all, I want to thank the commissioners for doing the hard work of going through all the applications. I mean, there was a lot of material. And I don't think we're in the position to second-guess their recommendations. That would require us to go through 28 applications, and we can't do that. But there are some concerns I think we need to address. So I definitely think we need to provide the commission with clearer or better direction about what our objectives are. So I'm not sure how to do that. We could have a work session discussion, et cetera, or maybe we could have a 3-person committee of council members working with Jeff to figure out, or just council members to figure out, to come up with some recommendations for us. But we definitely need to refine our direction to the commission. I think we all, it's kind of like what Kingsley said. I think my sense is that we should be providing this little pot of money for newer or smaller organizations, and to provide them with, provide small grants for them to get some stuff going, so that particular groups, especially that represent marginalized or new communities within the city, have an opportunity to invent a few things, to try to learn how to do this and get some things going. And I also think we need to limit future grants to not more than some amount, so that we don't have like 12,000, 15,000, or whatever going, maybe even 25,000 going to one entity. For this little pot of money, I think we need to be more precise about that. And let me think. I noticed, too, that the process the commission followed resulted in a request that we add an additional 3,800. And that's not problematic, probably, in the moment. But I think if we say it's 25,000, it ought to be not more than 25,000.
It sets a bad precedent.
Yeah. And I have one other thing to say. And you may remember that we received a complaint from Ariana Aaron, a member of the commission, about the way her need to recuse herself from voting due to a conflict of interest was handled. And I think it was you, Eleanor, communicated with Ariana about that to help her understand that process. But we got to make sure the commissioners understand when conflict of interest is actually at stake and when to recuse and all that. So we don't have a commissioner feeling really upset and treated inappropriately. So anyhow, those are my thoughts. I think we need to provide better guidance is the main thing.
Stephanie must be watching from home. She sent me a message saying that all the applications are in there. There was just a glitch in the numbering, so.
Yeah, there is, because I just looked, and their ranking is like 1 to 28, and so there are 28 in there. They just, for some reason, got numbered starting with number 6.
Yeah, they put a lot of work into this. And
They did.
I respect that enormously.
Great job, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie.
To Jim's point, though, I mean, work session, 3-person committee.
Well, we have 15 work sessions or 20 or something already lined up, so.
To that extent, I was actually going to say, I'd be in favor of the 3-person committee.
I was gonna say
putting something
subcommittee.
together.
I'd like to suggest Kingsley and Pauline and one other person, but those
be
are just me
interested,
tossing up some.
That's fine.
Three of you. Okay? All right, so
Susan, Pauline Kingsley?
your charge is to develop a clearer set of objectives that we can provide the commission with for the next round of going through applications. Maybe clearer guidance about not going over the limit, maybe some advice about what the largest amount could be for any one project. Anything else?
You know, you're establishing a subcommittee to make policy recommendations to you. I hate to be a wet blanket here, but I think that's a problem.
You think what?
Do you mean in terms of like
I think
open
it's an
meeting?
open records problem. Yeah.
If 3 of us meet to come up with something and bring back to council,
It's just a recommendation coming back to council.
Well, it's an advisor, you're giving them the charge of developing a policy recommendation and making a policy recommendation to the council. That's not any different than the Economic Development Committee.
Well,
And
if,
that's what
yeah,
that's
okay.
what
So why
the
can't
law-
we
So if that's the
So-
deal, then we have to do it that way. We have to have notice.
Do it, all of us? Is that what you're saying?
I think you should just do it as a group. I think you can facilitate it by sending your initial ideas to the city manager ahead of time so that we can somehow have a maybe more efficient work session about it.
What if I met with you and took some of your thoughts and ideas, worked them out with Stephanie? She's obviously been through this process with the HR, and then I'll take your input and her input and give you some recommendations.
Okay.
okay.
That works.
sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay.
that works great.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good. All right. Any other information items,
Always the
packet
wet blanket.
items? I guess I want to say one thing briefly. Jeff shared with us, this is what, IP5? Yeah, IP5 shared with us an article titled Cities on a Hill. And it was all about, by a couple of very competent people, Amy Liu, I recognize her name for sure, and they basically argue that cities must think and act regionally. And I mean, I think it's true that acting and thinking regionally is really smart for a lot of issues. But sometimes you just have to get off the dime and you have to act. And so.
I thought it just hit on so many things that
Yeah.
we spin our wheels on and we talk about. So.
Okay, any other items in the packet? Is there what else do we
Wanted me
need
to
to do
remind you
something?
about the schedule.
Yeah, thank you, because this is something Maz had brought up as well. So we need to think just a little bit about our regular council meeting schedule for the end of May and June. So Maz, you were telling me something during the break. Would you
Yeah.
repeat that, please?
I just I want to tell you that most of the time we go like to Sudan during summer. I take my kids and leave. Last year we haven't because of the campaign, but this year definitely we plan to go. And since we going there like in 2 years or something like that, we need to spend more time with our family, and the ticket is really expensive. We always, just try to spend more time there. That's why I will be gone, from beginning of June to the end of July.
Wow.
And I know that there is a meeting on June 4, it was June 5th, and after that you guys transferred it to June 4 because of the primary on June 5th. Right. I'm just requesting kindly if you can do that on the 29th of May instead of June 4th, 29th of May. So I can attend at least that meeting and miss only one in June and 2 in July. And I will do my best to be on phone. To call in for those meetings.
I would tell you, Maz, that's my sacred 5th Tuesdays out of some months. I don't know if I can do that.
Which one, the 29th?
Yeah.
So can we be clear about what
Oh my
dates we
gosh.
currently have scheduled, because my calendar reads a little differently.
Right, so currently it's May 1st and May 15th for May.
Right.
May, I'm okay with
And
May.
then
yeah.
June 4th and June 19th is the tentative.
Yeah, since June, I guess May had like 4 Tuesdays, right? 5 Tuesdays. That's why I thought maybe the 29th, it still will be like a week later or 2 weeks later from the, 2 weeks later from the.
What are the dates in July?
The 3rd and the 17th.
Yeah, so you'd have to miss both of those meetings, right?
For July, definitely I'm going to be missing because I'm coming after the 17th, like the 19th.
Okay.
And the thing is, I was trying to attend really June 6th, but the ticket expensive on that day. If I attend the June 5th and left on June 6th, the ticket is really expensive. But if I travel like on the weekend, it will be much cheaper.
So let me just say something. I'm completely willing to shift from June 4th to May the 29th, because that would be a 2-week gap between the 15th and 29th. But I can tell you I won't be here, at least I don't expect to be here on the 29th, and that's okay with me. Pauline
Or
can
the
handle
19th.
that well,
19th.
and that would,
The 19th, you mean, of June? You said
29th.
the 29th.
No, the 29th.
Oh, you won't be here on the
29th.
29th, okay.
Yeah, I won't be here. I
Okay.
don't plan to be here on the 29th anyhow.
Okay.
But that would make things better for Maz, because that means you'd only miss the ones in July,
Yes.
right?
June.
And June.
And one
So
in
the
June.
June 19th, John said he's going to be out of town too, so it would be you, Rockne, John, and Maza all gone
There's not even a quorum.
On the 19th.
on the June 19th.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where are y'all going?
I'm going on the civil rights.
I was just joking. I was like, oh, yeah.
Okay, so Rocky
You
and John, you're
jealous
both
of
on
that.
the 19th also?
24, yeah, I'm doing the civil rights trip too.
Oh, okay.
Then we just.
Well, it looks like the June 19th needs to be canceled or changed.
Right.
So, I mean, I know we've got a lot on the schedule, but I'll tell you, in the past, we've managed to take at least one meeting off in
Yep.
the summer.
July, yeah.
Sometimes either both July and August, we've only had one meeting. And it sounds like maybe June 19th, we should just cancel.
Oh yeah, that would be great for me. So I can call in on 2 meetings on
We can
July.
do that.
I mean,
But that's,
it means we push some things back potentially. I mean,
Well,
we've got to try. What have you?
If you take a whole month off, there's probably going to be something that comes up, whether it's approval of a bid or something
Oh, that's
that we
true.
might
Yeah,
need to do
we
a
can
special
deal with
meeting
that through
for.
special
But
meetings.
if you're okay, we can work that out with you at the time.
Sure.
All right. So are we agreed to cancel the June 19th meeting?
Yes.
And are we going to move the June 4th to May 29th?
yep.
Sounds okay to me. So
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
But just to be clear, I won't be here I don't expect to be here for the 29th.
And then we're leaving July 3rd and July 17th alone.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Even though that's,
I mean, I think people need to think about their travel plans because, I mean, July 4th is on a Wednesday, so maybe people aren't trying to make any kind of a long weekend out of the first part.
I will be, so I won't be here, but I'm just one member, and I'm okay with a meeting.
Okay, so we're good to go, right?
Right.
For now.
Until the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Till tomorrow.
Is there anything else that has to be brought up?
Yeah, there's one more scheduling item. We have an appeal of a Historic Preservation Commission decision. So Jim and Susan, I think you've been through this before. The last one was the windows at St. Mary's.
Yep.
That was fun.
The council becomes a quasi-judicial body that rules on or examines the ruling of the Historic Preservation Commission. Eleanor will help get you up to speed when that time comes. They can be lengthy. They can take 45 minutes, hour and a half, because you're taking testimony from the multiple sides. So the question is, do you want to do that as a work session, replace your work session with that at it's your second meeting in April, knowing that you've got this list that you're anxious to get going on? Or do you want to schedule a special meeting, or do you just want to tack it on to your regular agenda?
Which date is that, the 17th of April?
That would be April 17th, yes.
Tax day.
So I would prefer the work session because my schedule's awful, but it's up to everybody else.
That's fine. You said you wanted a special meeting, or?
Yeah, we could do a special meeting. I think that's been done in the past. Or we could just 5 o'clock work session, know that we've got an hour and a half to get it done. And
Could we meet earlier, like 4:30? Give us at least a little more.
Or 4?
Or
It
4?
works on those days. I cut off from 4 out. Yeah.
4?
Does 4 on the 17th work
Okay.
for you folks?
Yeah.
Sure. It's 1 hour is not enough for it.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds like we'll meet at 4.
we'll just confirm with the parties that they're available at that time. But I would block it out on your calendars.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, last thing. Sorry.
Oh.
Last thing. I'm almost done. So I did miss the GPSG conversation. I know that we voted it down. I would say that I'm in disagreement. So I wanted to make sure that was a part of the record, so to speak. For me, I'm just kind of reading through my notes real quickly, sorry. I see it as the same as UISG. It's a governmental structure. I understand the comments around, what about other entities? When I was thinking about this and kind of deliberating on our conversations related to this, when we talk about partnerships with the university, I think we have a good partnership with UISG. I think we have a good partnership with the administration at the university as well. I mean, as a former graduate student, and many of you have been either former graduate students or have worked in the graduate school, we're leaving a community out, and
But
that's a problem.
I'm not sure you have quite the right understanding, because what we agreed to do is appoint a city council liaison to them for a year, and then assuming everything works well, and even if we decide to change before then, to probably add them as a regular liaison. So we're not ignoring them.
And I'm aware of that.
Okay.
No, I'm aware of that part.
Okay.
And, I would say, how many times have we gone to a UISG meeting? I know that maybe, Jim, you've been at 1. I know that 2.
Twice in my term.
I know I haven't been. And so I know our schedules get busy. I mean, I'm even speaking primarily for myself. That's just not possible.
But this is formalizing that liaison position for
Right.
us to them.
Right. And so I'm just explaining my piece around, the fact that, again, from a graduate student perspective, I don't want to, leave that or forget that community in part. So I do appreciate the fact that we're adding the city council liaison for a year, but I do, stress the fact that, having a seat at the table, especially, what is it called? Can't vote, so what's it called?
Ex officio.
Ex officio. I was going to say ex parte, but that was not it. Ex officio member does have its importance, and I frequently, focus on Ben and Gustav as far as, hey, what do the students feel about this? And, that's all I wanted to say.
Yes, I agree.
All right, hearing nothing further.
I am, just really quickly, I know it's getting late, two things. Steering committee for the Access Center is still going strong. There is a new piece that is involved in that is critically important. There is a strong interest, and this is also particularly coming out of the university and university hospital, of pairing a federally qualified health center with the Access Center. If this can be done, it will allow for billing in a different way, which will allow for higher reimbursement rates, which will change the pro forma for the Access Center to make it more revenue neutral. So it could be a huge, huge bonus for us. So the university's working on that. They're bringing in a woman from Des Moines, I forget her name, who understands these FQHC platforms and how they work. It's also timely or fortuitous that the county has backed away from a property purchase that they were looking at, because the property they were looking at would not necessarily have fit very well with the possibility of now having an FQHC with the Access Center. So in that last meeting, tried to make it clear to the county representative to please relay to their property committee the need to really work with the steering committee about what those property needs might be, because they might look very different than what they would have before. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Also, with everything moving forward on the data-driven data.
Oh, Susan, before you go forward, is there any timeline for?
There is not a specific timeline. We're working closely with the university, still on them. If there is an FQHC, there is a possibility that they would be the managing entity of the whole Access Center. There's nothing certain about any of this. It's all discussions that are going on at this point. I did have a meeting with Ken Cates last week or the week before, Vice President over at the hospital, to talk about it from the elected's perspective and my position on the steering committee. Also, they, as part of this and part of potential grants going forward, they have created a data-driven justice initiative stakeholder group. They had their first meeting, and they had been focusing mostly on partners who have the data that they need. So mental health providers, hospitals, the jail, et cetera. Part of the conversation, they realized they'd kind of left out the electeds. So I have been approached, because I've been on the steering committee from the beginning, to be a member of that stakeholder group, and I've accepted that invitation to be on that. And finally, Jeff had sent us an email a week or two ago that had come from labor, what looked like a liaison to be involved in kind of labor's work on affordable housing. I had a phone call yesterday with John Whalen from the union. He's out of Bloomington, Illinois. What they're doing is they're looking at getting accreditation or qualification across various states. They have about 10 states that he's responsible for. Somebody who is in a position as a city council member really is not the ideal person to have as part of this. So John and I had a really good, frank conversation about that. And once he really explained to me what they were doing, I said, I'm really not the right person, and nobody on our council really is. So he's already talked to Jennifer Daly. Okay, he's already talked to Jennifer Daly from the Economic Alliance. So they're looking for one or two people maybe out of the state of Iowa who fit the bill a little bit better to help them get the qualification for the state. And it is not affordable housing. This is more about commercial enterprise, but getting tax credits and things for commercial. Might have a residential component. So I just wanted to let you know that I would not be involved in that. So, okay, that's it.
Okay, who's next?
Sorry about that.
Nobody.
Board information.
Okay, good. I think we're done for the night. Thank you.